Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is David Fraser Harris. I'm the Regional Secretary General for the Universal Peace Federation in the Middle East, and I will be introducing this morning or this afternoon's program. The Middle East Peace Initiative has been promoting peace since 2003 through dialogue, people-to-people diplomacy, fact-finding trips, interfaith pilgrimages and conferences. It brings together religious leaders, parliamentarians, academicians, women leaders, youth and civil society representatives together in Israel, the Palestinian territories and in Jordan. When we did this in the 2000s, we also explored, following that, approaches on a track 2 level to the crisis in Syria with conferences in Geneva, in Amman, and in Larnaca, Cyprus. I personally spent 14 years in Syria, so I have a big interest in the development that we're all seeing in the news today. More recently, following the Abraham Accords, we launched a series of webinars exploring different perspectives and different approaches to peace in the region. My role is to introduce our speakers, so I'm going to introduce our 3 speakers as follows. Prime Minister Olmert. Ehud Olmert served as Prime Minister of the State of Israel from 2006 to 2009. Born in 1945 in Israel, a graduate of the Hebrew University in psychology, philosophy, and law. He served in the Israeli Knesset from 1973 to 2009 and was elected twice as the mayor of Jerusalem, 1993 and 1998. He was elected prime minister in 2006 as the leader of Kadima, and he led Israel during the Second Lebanon War. His primary priority as prime minister was a peace agreement with the Palestinians. In November 2007, he attended the Annapolis Peace Conference led by President George W. Bush, and in 2008, he proposed the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas peace on the basis of the two-state solution. Dr. Nasser Al-Kidwa served as the second Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations. Born in 1953, he graduated from Cairo University with a degree in dentistry. Soon after that, he became an executive member of the Palestinian Red Crescent. Dr. Al-Kidwa, who is the nephew of historic PLO leader Yasser Arafat, represented the Palestinian Liberation Organization at the United Nations from 1991 to 2005. In that year, he became the foreign minister of the Palestinian Authority, and he served in that role until 2006. He later served as deputy representative to Syria for the United Nations and the League of Arab States, and also special envoy to Libya for the League of Arab States. I'm about to hand over to our main moderator for this evening, so I will introduce him, and this will be Guy Taylor, who's the National Security Editor at the Washington Times. He oversees the paper's Threat Status daily newsletter and weekly global security podcast. Mr. Taylor is an award-winning journalist with nearly 25 years of experience reporting from Washington, D.C., but also, and that's important for us here, from more than 40 countries around the world, including the Middle East. Over the years, he's filed dispatches from Israel, the West Bank, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, and other nations, delivering journalism that has garnered international attention because of its depth in trying to explain the geopolitical and local complexities behind the conflicts that have gripped the region through the first quarter of the 21st century. Mr. Taylor holds an MS in Global Security Studies from the Angelo State University and a BA from Clark University, and he was part of a team who won the Society of Professional Journalists Award for their reporting on the terrorist attacks of 9/11. So I think we're in good hands. I'm going to hand over to you now, Guy, and I know that one of our speakers has not yet come, so I'm going to say that right up so our audience know. We're hoping that the second speaker will be in time to join us for the full program. Let me pass over to Guy Taylor now. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, David. Thanks to the Washington Times Foundation and the Universal Peace Federation. First off, it's really a tremendous honor for me as a journalist to be here with our very distinguished guest to start off the panel here. Former Prime Minister Olmert has spent recent months working directly and closely with former Palestinian Foreign Minister Nasser Al-Kidwa on a very important peaceful dialogue to put forward a series of proposals for what could be a lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. And while the critical view might be that the proposals that Mr. Olmert and Mr. Al-Kidwa talk about, and what we're going to get into here in this discussion, the critical view might be that they're just pie in the sky or impossible. But the fact that they're on the table and that these two men are talking about them, I think that is in itself a manifestation of hope. And what we need in the Middle East and actually in the world right now is hope and peaceful dialogue. And while it might also seem that neither the Palestinian Authority or Hamas or the Netanyahu government in Israel have any real appetite for peace and territorial negotiations at this moment, the reality is that the fighting is going to stop. And the proposals that former Prime Minister Olmert has been working on with former Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa, they're vital to outlining the building blocks for the dialogue that has to come afterwards. So I want to just, before we jump into those building blocks, a couple of quick bits of context here. So much has happened since October 7, 2023, the Hamas attack on Israel. The Israeli military has responded with incredibly aggressive campaign in Gaza to try and destroy Hamas. We've also seen Israel take the fight to Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Both Hamas and Hezbollah have essentially been decapitated. Their top leadership has been killed. And they've both been militarily set back significantly. Israel and Iran have directly exchanged missile barrages, putting the region on the edge of a potentially very dangerous and larger war. And now, in just the past 2 weeks, we've seen the historic fall of the Assad regime and an autocratic Cold War era dictatorial regime that controlled Syria for half a century. It is now gone. Syria borders the West Bank, it borders Jordan, it borders Lebanon, it borders the Golan Heights. And the situation in Syria is now incredibly fluid. So one of the things I'm hoping we can talk about is how that impacts the future of Palestinians and the future of Israel's security situation. And then finally, the last thing here is we're also in the midst of a historic transition of power in the United States. During his first term as president, Donald Trump oversaw the arrival of the Abraham Accords. That this normalization and peaceful diplomatic recognition of Israel by some key Arab powers. So I also am looking forward to hearing from the former prime minister about how the change in power in Washington may create openings, but also possibly hurdles going forward. And so with that, I'd like to open the floor to you, Prime Minister Olmert. First, tell us a little bit about your proposal, and then give us some insight on how you see the current situation in terms of what matters right now and over the coming month.
Thank you very much for the introduction, for the analysis. I'll try to match up some of what you already said briefly. I hope Dr. Al-Kidwa will join us. He was scheduled to be with us, and I feel comfortable when we are talking together, because this is a joint initiative. This is a proposal that we drafted together and signed and published it back in July. The proposal is not a comprehensive, detailed peace agreement or a peace plan. This is, I think, a proposal of the principles that we have outlined for the end of the war in Gaza and for the negotiations of a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The cessation of violence in Gaza is the following. We think, of course, that all the hostages must be returned, that a great number of Palestinian prisoners will have to be released from Israel. Israel will have to stop the war, and we will have to eventually pull out from Gaza, while a security force will take over that will guarantee that no further attacks from Gaza will be aimed against Israel. The Gaza will have to be administered and controlled by a group of commissioners that will have to be linked to the Palestinian Authority, but will have to be independent in running the Gaza district and restoring some civility and administration, which is completely free of any terrorist elements that control Gaza for so long a time. So this is for the war in Gaza, the end of the war in Gaza. We propose that Israel and Palestine will embark on negotiations for a comprehensive solution of the historic conflict on the basis of the two-state on more or less the 67 borders. Israel will be, in the course of this agreement, Israel will annex 4.4% of the territory, which is the West Bank, where 82% of the Israelis living outside of the Green Line lives, and equal-sized territory will be swapped from what was part of the state of Israel prior to 67, will be swapped to the Palestinian state. There will also be a direct connection, physical connection, between Gaza and the West Bank by a highway which will be built between the two separated parts of what will be Palestine. The future of Jerusalem is of great significance. The Arab part of Jerusalem, that part of Jerusalem which was not part of the state of Israel prior to 67, will be the capital of the Palestinian state. All of the neighborhoods which were built by Israel in Jerusalem after the 67 will be part of the 4.4% that will be annexed to the state of Israel by agreement. Now the old city of Jerusalem will have no exclusive political sovereignty. We reached the inevitable conclusion that there will never be peace between Israel and Palestine if there will be one exclusive political sovereignty in the old city of Jerusalem. Whether Israeli or Palestinian, doesn't matter. Muslims will never agree to make full peace with Israel if the only flag on the Temple Mount will be Israeli. And equally, likewise, the Israelis will never agree to have peace if the exclusive political sovereignty over the Temple Mount will be Palestinian. So what we propose is that there will be a trust made up of few nations, of which Palestine and Israel will be part, that will administer under the auspices and the regulations of the United Nations Security Council, will administer the old city of Jerusalem, will keep it free for all believers, for all religions, all the time, so that no one will have any limitations in exercising the religious rights. We leave few issues for further negotiations between the parties, between the State of Israel and Palestine, when the leadership of these two nations will have the time to want to negotiate it. But what we propose is that the issue of the refugees will be resolved in negotiations within the framework of the Arab League Peace Initiative, and that the status of the Israeli settlements, which are outside of the 4.4% of the territory which will be annexed, and these are only about 18% of the Jews living across the Green Line of 67, live in outside of the 4.4%. So there will be an option for relocation into the annexed territories for all the 18%, or that they may choose to live in Palestine, but in that case, they will have, of course, to live within the context of the Palestinian Constitution and laws. So this is briefly the framework for what we think is the only possible way for a comprehensive political solution of the historical conflict.
You made the very initial point that the proposal that you've put forward is not a comprehensive peace plan, but there certainly are some specifics. And
fundamental principles of what ought to be the agreement.
So in these fundamental principles, let's drill into it a little bit more. One that's jumped out at me is the proposal specifically for a full Israeli troop withdrawal from Gaza, and then the deployment of what you and Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa are calling a TASP, a temporary Arab security presence. One, do you see an appetite on the part of the Netanyahu government to pull Israeli forces eventually out of Gaza? Number one. Number two, how do you see this temporary Arab security presence coming into existence? This is something that has been elusive and was elusive in the months really right before October 7, 2023. Do you see this including international troops, perhaps from Egypt, perhaps from Jordan, perhaps even Saudi Arabia or UAE? Is there an appetite among concerned Arab parties to participate in such a force?
The idea is that it will be made up of Palestinians, of Egyptians, of Jordanians, of Emirates, Saudis, Bahrainis, perhaps other Muslim countries and Arab countries. I think it's realistic, it's possible. The main thing is that the Palestinians understand, and they understand, that what happened in the period since October 23, the October 23 was a terrible, traumatic, dramatic event for us. But it turned out to also be a disaster for Palestinians and for Palestine. Tens of thousands of Palestinians were eliminated, lost their lives. Many of them are Hamas, but not only Hamas. When the terrorist organization is embedded in perhaps the most densely populated area in the world, and they are hiding underground, on ground, inside houses, inside hospitals, public facilities, schools, mosques, and so on and so forth, there is a likelihood, as it turned out to be, that they will lose their lives in the effort, which was almost internationally approved by everyone, that Israel has to make in order to reach out for the killers and the terrorists and the murderers of the Hamas. So I think that the Palestinians living now in Gaza are anxious to change, are anxious to, and they understand that there is not any benefit for them by continuing this confrontation. And I think that it opens up. Nothing is guaranteed, and I'm not naive, and I know that there will be many terrorist forces still are trying to somehow trigger confrontation. That's why we need an Arab task force that will be taking over instead of Israel in Gaza in order to prevent any further attacks against the state of Israel. And I think that in the event that some preconditions will be fulfilled, primarily if the Palestinian Authority itself will be reformed, as President Biden thinks it should be, as many of the Arab countries think it should be, as many Palestinians think it should be, then there is a very good likelihood that these Arab countries that I have mentioned will pull themselves into a task force, a military task force that will be considerable and that maybe will be assisted by some European soldiers. I don't know. It will have to be negotiated. Now, you said, what about Netanyahu? Is he ready? Is he prepared? I don't think so. I don't think that he is ready to pull out from Gaza, but I think that he will have to, whether he likes it or not, in the event that he will remain prime minister, which is also now a big question. So, yeah, Israel will have to change positions. We will not be able to control Gaza. I think that the last 14 months proved that while we have complete military superiority over the Palestinians, there is no question about it, at the same time, it is a very costly process. And if we want to bring back the 100 hostages which are still kept by the Palestinians, we'll have to make that concession, whether we like it, we don't like it, whether it is risky to some degree. It may be risky to some degree, but I prefer the 100 hostages back at home, even if it means a certain risk that we will have to take. We are strong enough, powerful enough, and we have proved it in order to have to face this risk. So I think while it is not easy and not simple, this is realistic to believe that we will have to stop the war and pull out from Gaza.
The prospect of a multinational Arab force taking control of security in Gaza is definitely something that deserves more attention in the international media space. There's no question. It's mentioned on the periphery, but it's been a key element of behind-the-scenes diplomacy, I think, that has involved William Burns, U.S. Secretary of State, the CIA Director, U.S. Secretary of State.
All of them are fully aware of all the complexities of this, and yet at the same time, they know one thing. There needs to be an exceptional effort by all parties concerned in order to prevent a repetition of what happened in October 23.
Right.
So everyone wants it because what happened in 23 is not something that Palestinians want to experience again. It's not something that the international community wants to watch again, and it's not something that Israel wants to be involved in.
You're specifically saying we need an Arab task force towards this. And I want to get back to that in a minute and ask you about the chances for momentum behind that when you have a new Trump administration in Washington. But before we do, I want to drill into one more, I think, really critical principle in your proposal, which is also somewhat immediate, which is the call for the creation of a Palestinian entity to administer and rebuild in Gaza. And to get there, you do specifically call for the creation of a council of commissioners. You've mentioned it. It would be composed more of technocrats, not necessarily political representatives, but you suggest, you and Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa suggest that this council should be linked with the West Bank based Palestinian Authority to prepare both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip for elections. I think it's within a year.
Yeah, 24 months, 36 months, more than a year, but in a well-defined time framework.
How do you see this council of commissioners forming? Would that also be something for an Arab task force? Is that something the Israeli government would have a direct hand in choosing? No. And more importantly, does Hamas in your view, have any chance of a role in the formation of this council?
No, no, no. Look, it's complex. I'm sorry, but yet at the same time, this is inevitable. Israel should not, and I believe will not, be controlling Gaza from the inside. It's over. Gaza is not part of the state of Israel, should not be part of the state of Israel. I regret that at the time that we made the peace agreement with Egypt, going back 50 years, almost 50 years, we didn't have the wisdom and the understanding that we have to force Egypt to make Gaza as part of the Egyptian authority and part of the Egyptian sovereignty, because I think that may have saved all of us a lot of troubles that we had to go through over the years. But Israel should not and will not be in control of Gaza. Israel will have the right, of course, to defend itself from outside, as we had until October 7th, 2023, except that while we had to defend our border in Gaza, we were asleep. We didn't have forces there. We were away from that, and that's what made it possible for them to break through in the first place. I mean, this is not an imminent danger that Israel couldn't cope with. We could cope with it easily had we been there. But we were not there because of arrogance, because of overconfidence, or whatever. Anyway, I think that the Palestinian Authority, I want it to be reformed. Dr. Al-Kidwa thinks it should be reformed. And the international community, the Arab countries, the Emirates, the Saudis, the Americans want the Palestinian Authority to be reformed. It has to be at a different, more effective body, government body, but it is the legal framework without which we will have no central authority amongst the Palestinians to represent them, which is very dangerous. We will return back into the different organizations. There will be Hamas, there will be Jihad, there will be Fatah, there will be other organizations. No, we want to have the Palestinian Authority as the representative body, but Palestinian Authority is not made now, is not capable now, is not qualified now to actually run Gaza. So it will have to be under the authority of the appointment of the Palestinian Authority, that they will appoint a leadership, the representative that will be in charge of running Gaza, and he will not he will not have to report on a daily basis to the Palestinian Authority. He will have to run to build up the necessary representatives, commissioners, technocrats that will run the administration of Gaza. And we presume, and I think there is a good reason to presume that under these circumstances, Arab countries will provide the necessary means for this to rebuild Gaza and control Gaza in a way that will change the quality of life in Gaza for all the people living there.
I want to get on to your views on Trump and his impact, as well as the situation in Syria. But just to really drill down on the Hamas factor here in the future, a disarmed Hamas, Hamas as a political movement. I bring this up because I was watching closely a few months ago at the Aspen Security Forum when Salam Fayyad appeared on stage, the former Palestinian Authority prime minister, arguing publicly, and he also wrote about this in a prominent article in Foreign Affairs.
Who did he argue with?
Basically saying Hamas as an ideology is not going away, and how does it get incorporated into a future peace dialogue? So I guess what I'm asking you is there any chance of acceptance of Hamas as a political party or in this future formation of a Palestinian unified government?
I express my opinion here, not I can't represent Dr. Al-Kidwa simply because this is not part of our joint statement. But I can say this: look, no one that has a similar opinions to mine. This is not necessarily the Israeli government, as we all know, thinks that we can destroy or that we can wipe away from the earth the ideas of Hamas. But we can, and we did, destroy the military capacity of Hamas. Hamas today is not what it used to be a year ago or 2 years ago. Hamas today is an organization which has been broken down to pieces. All the leadership, all the hierarchy of leaders of Hamas, all were eliminated. They do not live. All the structure and the organization of the army disappeared. It doesn't exist. There are still, of course, Hamas fighters, and they will be there for a long time. And therefore, what we need is a security force that will take over from Israel and will not force Israel to remain in Gaza in order to block the Hamas. But Hamas as an organization is not a candidate for being part of the leadership of Gaza in the future.
At its core, the proposal is more or less a two-state solution proposal. And
it's exactly
I want to ask you, because there's polling over the last 2 or 3 years that brings into question the extent to which Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinian masses, the public still believes that a two-state solution is the right idea or should be pursued. Are you confident that there can be widespread popular Palestinian support after what's gone on over the last year for the two-state solution?
I'll tell you, number one, there obviously the events of October in the south border of Israel, both for them and for us, were devastating. I mean, the emotional reaction of most Israelis was, the hell with the Palestinians. We don't want to hear from them. We don't want to negotiate with them. We want to fight. We want to kill. We want to reach out for the murderers, regardless of anything. And of course, the devastation in the Palestinian side, the destruction of substantial part of Gaza, the killing of so many thousands of people, created a similar emotional reaction on their side, and maybe quite a few of them say, the hell with Israel, we don't want to do anything, and so on and so forth. But then the question is, okay, from our side, let's suppose that we destroy completely Hamas, not just almost everything. No one remains alive. There will not be one Hamas member alive. Okay, the idea will be floating somewhere, but there will not be any members of Hamas alive. We are still having 6 million Palestinians, right, in Gaza and in the West Bank. What are we going to do with them? This is an answer that we have to give. What are we going to do with them? What? Remain occupied forever? Deprive them of the natural rights for self-determination, of the freedom of movement, of the freedom of speech, of political rights, of voting rights? I mean, this is crazy. It's not going to hold. It's going to cost Israel a price that we perhaps can't even think of paying. So this is from their side. From our side. From their side, what? What do they think? If even after October 7th, 2023, they couldn't shake the foundations of Israel, they certainly caught us in a complete surprise. They devastated us. They killed thousands of Israelis, and so on and so forth. But after 14 months now, Hezbollah is almost non-existent. Syria has gone through a revolution, and it's not anymore a certain, for the time being. We don't know how things will develop, but for the time being, they are not the threat that they used to be, and we have destroyed in the last few days all of the infrastructure of the military power of Syria as it used to be for many years, and as it was a threat to the security of the state of Israel. Hamas has been almost completely destroyed. So what they may think that they can destroy the state of Israel, and even Iran, which is the framework and the basis for all the military power of the enemies of the state of Israel presently, has been weakened as a result of these military confrontations. So what the reasonable Palestinians may think, that they have a chance to destroy Israel. They will not destroy Israel, and we will not be able to get rid of Palestinians unless we will both come to the inevitable conclusion that we have to find a political solution. There can be only one political solution. There can be many different arrangements. Okay, transitional arrangements of sorts, autonomy for the Palestinians without political rights, an attempt to expel Palestinians from the West Bank, as some of the Messianic groups in Israel are trying to do. And we can go on and on, all kinds of different arrangements. One thing will not happen: peace. Peace, the only way to make peace is to reach a two-state solution agreement. And that's what we propose. So it may take slightly more time or less time. I don't know now. I know one thing, that all the research, the serious, deep research which has been done by the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, shows that 1/3 today, on these days, 1/3 of the Israeli people are in favor of a Palestinian state, more or less on the same parameters that we have outlined. 1/3 of the Israeli people are not in favor of a Palestinian state, but they will acquiesce if the Palestinian state will be an agreed solution. And 1/3 are against under any circumstance. So the basis exists in Israel for a comprehensive solution in this direction. We'll have to change, of course, we'll have to change. The government will have to change. We'll have to remove from participation in the government any of the Messianic groups that are now threatening the foundations of Israel more than the outside enemies. The inside, the enemy from within is more dangerous to us. And these are those of the hilltop youth which think that they can violate the rights of the Palestinians and fight against them and lynch them and burn their properties and their houses and kill them. We have to change, but I believe that we can change, and we will change, because we have no alternative.
I want to talk a little bit more about the situation in Syria and how it impacts, but even before we do that, before we get to the end here, let's look at the Donald Trump factor. You know, Donald Trump as president and then as a candidate has said various almost mixed messages on the issue of a two-state solution. On one hand, he's openly said, of course, I embrace a two-state solution. On another hand, he said, whatever they want, whatever the Israelis and the Palestinians want to work out. At the same time as all of that, he showed during his first term an ability to have very forward-thinking, very momentous relations with divided Arab powers. At the time, there was the Gulf Corporation Council crisis, the GCC crisis, which is more or less resolved at this point. The Trump administration's relationship with Saudi Arabia was front and center. It seemed as if Saudi Arabia could be the next addition to the Abraham Accords. There are indications this time around that the Abraham Accords initiative will be a central piece, presumably, of the administration's wider policy. A lot of questions about how the coming administration will, what its policy will be toward Iran. We know it will be a hawkish, hardline policy, but knowing Donald Trump, there's a possibility that he may do something like reach out and say, I would meet with the Iranian supreme leader, or I would do just some kind of really out-of-the-box diplomatic attempt. That's not impossible. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on Trump. And then the specific question is, do you think that Trump can energize and unify regional Arab powers to bring to life this Arab task force that you're proposing is so necessary. And just more broadly, how do you analyze the effect to be had by the coming administration in Washington?
Considering the time restraint that I have, I will be precise and short, but I think I'll answer your question. Number one, I don't know, you don't know what Trump will do. I am not certain that he knows what he wants to do. And this is not a point of criticism. This is because I think that he hasn't yet plunged deeper into the complexity of the situation to shape up his mind about the specific actions that he may take. But look, when Trump was president, he proposed the deal of the century, as he called it. Comprehensive peace between Israel and the Palestinians. It was it was unacceptable to the Palestinians because it required, according to his idea, to have a certain amount of territory annexed, perhaps bigger than the one that we proposed in our joint statement. But he also talked about two states. And if he will stick, and therefore I don't remember that Netanyahu ever said that he accepts the two states as part of what Trump proposed. And Trump himself subsequently said that he realized then that Netanyahu wasn't really interested in peace because, and he cursed him, in a manner which is sometimes typical of President Trump, who is so unusual and unconventional person. Now, I don't know what he will propose. I think that considering the circumstances, considering the fact that Trump really wants to become a healer and a unifier, and he is not interested in getting America into any military confrontations, I believe that he will look out for ways to talk with Iran, that he will also advise Israel and the Palestinians to sit down and start to talk business seriously. And therefore, I'm not, I want to be careful. I don't know what he will propose, but I don't rule out that he will surprise so many who think that he will say to Israel, do whatever you want, kill them, destroy them, break them, and so on and so forth. That's not what I think he will try to do.
Let's go to the Syria situation a little bit more here because it's very fluid. It's changing day by day. How do you see these developments? The fall of the Assad regime that had been backed by Iran, had allowed safe haven for Hezbollah. The Assad regime is gone. How is this likely to impact the chance of Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation? But then I just want to, for context here, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has indicated just in the last few hours that U.S. officials are having direct back-channel discussions with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. This is the group that led the sacking of Damascus.
Yeah, Jolani with his original name.
That's right. So how does the arrival of this Sunni Muslim group that was once aligned with Al-Qaeda, how does that impact the situation? How does Israel respond to this long term? So far, the Israeli military is carrying out a quick and aggressive waves of airstrikes against weapons depots, military equipment in Syria, as well as pushing into the Golan. We're seeing that now with vows from the Netanyahu government to expand settlements in the Golan Heights.
Let me.
This is delicate. And I just
make a concluding. If you don't mind, I'll make a concluding statement for our very exciting and interesting discussion. Unfortunately, without Dr. Al-Kidwa, I think that the collapse of the Bashar Assad regime is a very positive development, which no one who loves peace and integrity and honesty should regret. Bashar al-Assad was a killer, a murderer. He was described as such and labeled as such by the international community for good reasons. He killed more than 500,000 of his own people, the Syrians, during the civil war. I mean, this is totally outrageous and unacceptable and unforgivable. And therefore, his collapse, which was in a way was almost inevitable because of the corruption, because of the lack of democracy, because of the bitterness of the population, which has grown over the years as a result of, and the economic crisis, which has characterized Syria. Who are the new guys, the rebels? I don't think we know yet. We have to be watch it very carefully. The El-Sham said that he is not interested in a confrontation with Israel. It's true, maybe now. Will it be true in a year's time, 2 years' time, when he will establish a certain stability and control over Syria? I don't know. I think we have to watch it, and I'm very happy to hear that Secretary Blinken has established a backdoor channel to these guys to see what they are interested in and how they can retain or establish a certain stability within Syria without getting into a confrontation with us. Israel should not should not take over any part of Syria. What we did against the infrastructure of the Syrian army was absolutely necessary, so that and I hope that we have also destroyed all the storage, if there is, of non-conventional weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, which were used by Assad against his own people. So we knew that they have them. If they have some place where they have stored them, I hope it was destroyed, and the planes and the tanks and the bunkers and our research and development and manufacturing facilities of military equipment, because Syria doesn't have to have the basis to be able to somehow build up again its military power. So I think this is a positive development, has to be treated very carefully. Israel doesn't have to make any provocation that will force them to become more hostile than they may want to be. And I trust that the American administration, present and the incoming, will be attentive to the possible developments here and will advise the parties involved to restrain themselves from any unnecessary ambitions.
Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, thank you so much for
Thank
speaking so freely. And thank you for calling for peace, for bringing hope to the prospect that peace can and must happen. It's really an honor to chat with you in this forum.
When I see, my friends from the International Peace Federation, and I heard David Harris speaking, my friend David Harris, and you're representing them, and all the members of the organization, I feel that this is the best possible address to discuss peace. There can be no better one. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope that we'll have a chance to do it together with Nasser Al-Kidwa in the near future.
I think that we have a couple of closing comments from either David Fraser Harris, our panel MC here, or maybe Dr. Michael Jenkins from Washington Times Foundation. And thanks for having me here as well.
Thank you, Mike.
We thank you sincerely for this very insightful and very important discussion. And we look forward to seeing Foreign Minister Al-Kidwa soon. And thank you, Guy. The Washington Times is very happy to be so directly connected with the central thinking of leaders of Israel. And your years of service, Prime Minister, has always been seeking peace. I think your proposal with Mr. Al-Kidwa is so important, and it was great to see the dialogues going on, because it's not going on very easily anywhere else. So thank you for the Washington Times, and Guy, great work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.